Welcome back to the Full Frame Podcast. I'm Ian. I am the host for this episode and all episodes. Today I have Tina and Paul with me to talk about the production process. So we've given the overview, we've talked about pre-production. Now we're on to the production phase of what our team at Avian does. Paul, before we get started, do you want to introduce yourself, just what you do for Avian, your title, and a little bit of background?
Sure. Senior videographer here at Avian. My background is majoring in film and media studies at University of California, Irvine. And that's where I learned just basic production and editing. And yeah.
Yeah, cool. So because I have you in the hot seat, let me just ask you one question. What's the coolest project that you've worked on? Because I know you've worked on a lot of cool things.
My passion is narrative storytelling, but I've made more like short documentaries in the past. So the travel was cool, but I guess I would have to resort to my passion. And so the coolest thing was a short film I made, 20 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that available anywhere, or is it?
It is.
Okay.
But as with older work, you're always kind of hesitant to.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm proud of it for at that time that I made it.
That definitely makes sense. I mean, let's not blame the work. We can blame technology, right? So cameras have come a long way in a very short amount of time, and all the gear really for that matter. All right, so let's get into today's topic, production. So we have this customer, we go through the pre-production process, we figure out the script and the message and do all that tailoring that you guys as a team do. What's next? What's that day look like for, say, Paul or say one of the other team members on set?
Yeah, so as we talked about, we want to make things as easy as possible for our customers. And filming day takes a lot of scheduling and pre-work, as we've talked about as well. I know I'm the neurotic planner, so Paul can probably attest to. I always want to get there way earlier than anybody else, and then I rely on my creative team to really decide this is the best background, this is the best lighting, and really, I'll let Paul talk about that because that's his area of expertise as well.
Yeah, I mean, we do always try to keep the sun in mind and try to have our speakers in front of the sun, or the sun, they're being backlit by the sun.
Right.
So they're not being shown on by the sun. And we just basic setups. Sometimes we'll need a slider. Sometimes we'll need a gimbal. Tripod's always a given. I think Tina has the hardest job in terms of planning the beginnings,
right.
Logistic, and just coordinating with all the people involved. And we're just ready to shoot.
So I guess one question I have is, at this point of the process, how familiar are you with the content? So you get to set and I assume you probably already have looked over the content, looked over the script as to what you're shooting. Now, how do you take that knowledge and pick where you're going to be shooting? So one example I think you were talking about is in front of some sort of hangar, or do you want to expand on that? Because I don't know.
Yeah, as a team, we review the concept sheets, the storyboards. We talk about a shot list ahead of time. And then, our videographers, especially Paul, can then make suggestions on, how about if we do this? Mm-hmm. And that might be something I never thought about or the customer never thought about, but he has that eye. Right. So in one of the Human Performance Lab and ASIL Lab virtual tours, it was a big hangar door that we were in front of.
Yeah, because the speaker, he sets up for the viewer to kind of have a tour of the chamber. And so we thought he'd just kind of set that up, or everyone come inside. And then we did a separate shot, just kind of going into the hangar with our gimbal. That would lead right into his narration voiceover. And so the timing of that was a little bit tricky, but it worked on the third try or something.
Yeah. Oh,
Right. So in the
Third time's a
video,
charm.
it looks like he's inviting everyone into
Right.
the chamber, which looked really cool.
So is that the chamber that has like, so I don't know if you can see this on camera, that this like kind of foam, but much larger, that's that. What I'll do is link to that video. So if you're listening or watching to this, you can see what we're
a
talking
super
about.
cool video,
It's a very
yeah.
cool shot. Kudos to you for seeing. And,
Yeah,
and,
everyone's jealous that you got to see that. Because it's a cool chamber.
very cool. Okay, so are there any, besides the videographer, what other people might be involved with the production that day? Is there anybody else?
So yeah, it depends on the size of the filming. So we do a lot of welcome messages for change of commands, which is becoming a very popular and well used feature.
Yeah.
Especially as people are still doing a hybrid work environment. And so that's typically the new commander will speak. So we either have him or her inside or outside, depending on what they prefer. So it can be, our 2 or 3 cameras that we're using. We mic up the person typically for the best sound. So that's another person on set. I'm on set to make sure things go according to schedule. If it's more than one person, then we typically have a bigger crew because you have more people to mic up and more people to manage. Yes. So
I had a couple thoughts there. So I guess my question on top of that, and this kind of is outside of the scope of this episode, but for a message like that, I imagine it doesn't take all day. What's the time span to do like a quick message?
So it really is unique to the customer.
Okay.
We've done welcome messages or welcome aboard messages where the commander or captain spoke and we recorded and it was all done. We've had welcome aboard messages that were scripted by the communications officer. It really depends on what that particular customer would like to do. It always takes longer than the actual message. So
Right.
the message might be, 3 to 10 minutes, but we've filmed for an hour and a half
Yeah.
or 2 hours.
Right.
The teleprompter makes things a lot faster for them.
Right.
I think before that, it took a little longer.
Yeah. I guess my point there is that it's a message that it has a lifespan of infinity basically, and you can reuse that message and it only takes an hour and a half to get a very high quality
Right.
video done. I think I might be biased, but I think that's great value.
Yeah, and what our team's great at is getting the B-roll that can be used along with the speaker with the narration. And Paul and the rest of our team are really good at. We may be filming a particular aircraft, and then through the message the welcome aboard message, we'll make sure we get the aspects of the aircraft that
Right.
that new commander or captain wants to convey to the team, or we'll bring in our graphic artist who will then create some things for us that maybe are 2Motion or created in another program, so we can bring all those facets together.
Sometimes Tina will know exactly how long I'll need to actually shoot the B-roll.
Yeah.
'Cause she's come up with the concept sheets and even the length of how long it's going to be, the final product. And so I tend to overshoot, but it's good to overshoot as well sometimes for these type of particular videos.
That was going to be my next question is how. So there's obviously that point where the customer or whoever's the talent, I guess, that's on camera has to be there. But again, they're probably not there for the entire day. It's probably because you sound very methodical of how you're scheduling things out. They're probably only there for an hour at a time, or less. And then after that, it's really doing the B-roll piece where you don't need the talent. You just go around and shoot to the context of what the person is saying. So anything else that you want to expand on that?
What makes I think our team here at Avian unique is that we're very well versed in the government customer, and so when the customer explains to us the B-roll they would like to use, we can easily find it on, the Department of Defense assets, or within the program's assets that we know we have permission to use.
Yep.
So that makes the process a whole lot faster for us.
All right, we went off script a little bit, but I think that was good. What to you guys, I just lost all of my questions. What to you guys makes a successful shoot? We'll talk about challenges a little bit later, but what to you guys is success in a shooting day?
I think for me, I'm not my background isn't the Navy or Department of Defense, and so if I feel like I got an adequate amount of B-roll or just, I feel like that kind of helps me feel a little satisfied. It's kind of, I like the overshooting. I like that overshooting process and having enough.
Yeah.
Because I know we will lose viewers if we're just seeing talking heads. And so,
and we don't want to have to go back to the customer and say, hey, can we come back to your space and shoot more B-roll?
Absolutely.
We want to get it on that first try. Anything else?
Yeah, well, I think it's really the marriage of the planning side and the creative side. So my goal is to give everyone enough structure to be creative, and to respect our speakers, who are usually higher ranking individuals. We interviewed the executive director at Webster Field, and he was only available between this time and this time, and so we knew we had to be ready. When he showed up, we had to be ready to film, and it was about 1,000,000 degrees that day outside, and so we had to make sure that we were taking care that his appearance on camera was, still the way he intended, and he did a fantastic job and looked great on camera. So he made our job really easy.
Yeah. So one of, I guess, a couple things that we kind of keep bringing up in these episodes is that, we're always trying to make the customer's life easier. You guys as a team, I keep saying we because I'm thinking like Avian as a company, but you guys really as the team are trying to keep the customer's life as easy as possible. You give them the schedule so they know when to show up. You don't keep them that long to do the shooting process. You have everything with you to set up and do all the B-roll. So that I think is a major point for us. And then also just giving them that platform to be able to tell their message or deliver their message to their workforce. All right, so that was successes. What about challenges? Is there anything that sticks out in your head as the things that maybe not so much challenging as far as like working with people, but to me, I feel like if I was shooting video on base, the jets going off every once in a while would probably be a big challenge. Are there things like that have happened in the past, and how have you kind of worked around that?
I mean, that definitely was, at least until now, the biggest challenge for our first virtual tour. I think we've interviewed some of the interviewees at least 5, 6, 7 times, some of them. Mm-hmm. And so that was challenging, just with even birds, crows, just nonstop.
We've heard that story.
So, and there was a huge wind tunnel, I guess they would call it.
Okay.
And so we had to avoid that, or we couldn't avoid it for some of the interviews. And so that provided a challenge. Also in the winter, it didn't help being extremely cold.
Right.
But you couldn't tell because...
Right.
Well, yeah, that was my question. Are there things that we provide? Do we bring heaters or those little hand packet things, or should we in the future maybe?
I think we should.
We probably should.
Yeah.
We've been lucky that it has our biggest weather challenge has been heat.
Yes.
So we've been lucky the winter have been mild enough that the speakers have been comfortable. I wouldn't call a lot of them challenges. It's more opportunities that we have to plan ahead for.
Yes.
So like the air traffic control virtual tour, we're talking about a process, and they were telling us the process took 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
And then you came up with the time-lapse idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Then it ended up being like 15 minutes.
Yeah, and then we sped it up to less
Yeah,
than 5
less than
minutes.
5.
Right. Yeah, so that was just using really the technology that we have to take that long, probably boring, I imagine, process and make it something that's elegant and engaging for the viewer.
Right.
Because those videos meant for what's the audience with those videos?
So in all the virtual tours, there are two audiences. There's a version for the K through 12 community for STEM awareness and STEM education, and they're on NOC-AD's YouTube channel, so teachers can go to it and say, "Look at this, really cool stuff that's happening right here in our backyard in Southern Maryland." And then there is the I call it the recruiting version, which if you were a engineer, computer scientist, even a business major, you could look at that video and say, hey, I went to career fair and this organization called NavAir was there, and what do they do? Someone could go on and look at those and then learn how to apply for a job. And we thought that was really cool that we were helping to support the Navy and NOC-AD in their efforts to recruit the best, because there's some really cool stuff that happens.
Yeah. So again, making those longer clips probably engaging, especially for that K-12 audience who probably has a very short attention span at this point.
And we did things like we put music on it and took a request for a 20-minute video and said, let's do a series of 3 to 4-minute videos, so that the teachers could use it very quickly and weave it into a lesson plan if they wanted to.
Yeah, very cool. All right. Behind the scenes magic is actually the topic we have next, and probably one of the last topics we talk about. We've talked about a lot of behind the scenes stuff already. Is there anything with any of our shoots that sticks out to you as far as like shots you couldn't believe you captured, or something that was super challenging but you would never know by the shot that came out of it?
Yeah, the whole challenging thing we touched upon with the weather, I think you can tell from just all the interviewees, and we directed them to speak well, and they know their things, they know their stuff as well, and so it didn't look like they were struggling through it, but it was
so weather,
all the weather stuff. But I couldn't believe our first virtual tour, just the whole ASOL chamber again. Didn't know what to expect really and how vast that space was, and so I was given freedom to just walk around the whole space and get my establishing shots, and even climb up this almost 90-degree ladder with holding my gimbal. It was a staircase, but it looked like a ladder.
Yeah.
And there was a plane hanging from the ceiling, jet hanging from the ceiling.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just got my somewhat aerial type of shot from that, and so that was cool to experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything that sticks out of your mind, Tina?
There's so many cool things that we've done.
Right.
I mean, I'm going to give kudos to the team. Sometimes we film and we're in a lab or a workshop situation, so we want to realistically show the workspace, but we also want to make it as visually appealing as possible. So a lot of times we have discussions about how to frame something, and I'll rely on Paul and the team's expertise to say, okay, I like the idea of this shot, but do we have something better or different that we can use that gives a different visual? So
there's a lot of security stuff.
Yeah.
And I always want to shoot something this way, but then we can't because security.
So I'm going to, again, go off script just a little bit. I know you guys recently did a project at the Student UAS competition. How is that different than working with like a government customer? Did you already have the people that were going to speak on video lined up, like even the students? How did that work?
Yeah, so that was a really fun day at St. Mary's County Airport, Regional Airport, and There was a lot of planning that had to go into, and that was a different message. This was more of a promotional spot instead of an informational spot. So we worked hard on making sure the visuals stayed on the message. And I mean, you must have used up 1 million batteries that day because probably for 4 or 5 hours, Paul was around shooting everything and everyone. And then also incorporating some of the RoboNation and the SUAS organization's footage that they provided. And then coordinating with a couple college teams. That's always fun because it was summertime and it took a couple days.
So did you coordinate all that beforehand, or was it the day of?
We coordinated most of it beforehand. Okay. The shooting, we had to react on site to what was going on, right?
I mean, my background with events and just other things, my adrenaline turns on, and then I just shoot literally everything I see. It helps knowing, of course, what the event is about, and I just feel like what I see is important. I just go for it. Yeah, and then I direct our other shooter, Alex, to we'll switch off between our tripod and get bullet, so. I tell him, do this.
I think they kicked Paul off the flight line a couple times.
I go where the action is.
So we wanted to catch the shot.
That's I've been to a couple of those competitions before, and it's definitely a fun competition. And the fact that you guys got to capture it through video, and now again have that kind of, I don't know, artifact to live on of what that competition is, and all the different schools that come together is really cool. That we're
definitely go off the energy as well, and just seeing all the young people there. And
they were all very impressive, and we had a great time talking to them all and seeing all their, technical creations.
And they're just like probably so much smarter than me.
All right, so let's wrap this episode up. I think we covered a lot of what we wanted to cover, which is good. To kind of just summarize, it sounds like the production process is really a combination of taking all of the prep work that you have done and your team has done, and then adding that little bit of creativity in there for Paul to get on to the set or the location and decide this is going to look good for this shot, and have all of that kind of ready to go. So again, making it as easy as possible for the customer and giving them that platform to tell their story and deliver their message.
Yeah, I think it's a whole lot of creativity that goes into it, because there's a certain eye that you need for something to be visually appealing on film, versus you're watching it. So the team definitely has that eye, and our customers are very happy when we deliver the product.
Yeah,
I had no idea what I'd be doing if it wasn't for her direction, ultimately.
All right. So on the next episode, we are talking about post-production, taking all the wonderful stuff that Paul has shot on these sets and locations, and putting it together, putting it with music and animations, and we'll talk about whiteboarding animations and all kinds of stuff. So that is on the next episode. Tina, Paul, thank you for joining me. We'll see everybody next time.